So today what I want to do is talk to you really briefly about group roles. Now here's the cool thing. There's a really good chance that you're already pretty familiar with all this stuff. That's because you've been in these roles all semester. All of the roles that you used in your pods were all taken from this group roles model. And so hopefully these are not going to be completely foreign to you because you've seen them before, hopefully. All right. But Benne and Sheats were two organizational communications folks who kind of put this together, org psych, in a way of talking about what do you need in order for a group to be successful. And they kind of brought it down to three roles that were needed and one that we wanted to avoid. And so I want to do a brief overview of that, but then show you some of the more specifics because I feel like this is covered decently in your book, but that the specific roles are maybe not so much. And so I want to cover those in a little bit more detail. So, and this is one of those things that's going to be a pretty big question on your final exam. And so I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this material. So the three kinds of roles that are generally necessary for a group to be successful are the task roles. And most people everybody is going to do a task role. As a matter of fact, in your pods, you did not have task roles because the assumption would be that everyone would be doing it. In the Benne and Sheets, you'll see this is information giver, opinion giver, that kind of stuff. Procedural roles and maintenance roles are the ones that I asked you to assign to each other before we had to stop having classes in person. Procedural roles are those that keep the group focused, organized, and producing. They are the they are the logistics folks. They're the ones who are saying, when are we going to meet next? Who's going to do what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then maintenance roles are people that are the ones that foster the relationships, make sure we're cooperating, and keep the group from devolving into infighting or groupthink. All right. I'm going to show you more of that in just a second. The last set of roles are dysfunctional roles, and these are the ones we want to try to avoid. Okay. And that's because they are the ones that tend to derail things. These are the blockers. These are the people who are complaining or who are constantly trying to get everybody off on tangents. These dysfunctional behaviors were identified by Benne and Sheats as things we want to try to avoid. So, when we start to look at these questions here at the bottom of this slide, what roles are essential, what happens when they're missing, and why are people dysfunctional, I think that's actually the thing that I want to spend a little bit of time on before I show you all those specific roles. As far as what roles are essential, obviously without task roles, nothing gets done. But you also need someone to do the procedural. And usually when I see groups in classes, the task and the procedural roles do emerge. If they don't, usually a group's in trouble. The maintenance roles are the ones that are most like, that stuff is fuzzy and warm, fluffy stuff and, forget it. Those are the ones that are often missing in groups. And when they are, I'm almost never shocked when people start saying, hey, so-and-so isn't responding to emails and so-and-so is not doing their job. And normally when I start seeing that kind of stuff, I usually go, have you checked in with them? How are they doing? Did you try to assign them a role that reflected their strength? What did you do? And that's what the maintenance person does. And so a lot of times we skip those maintenance people. And when those are missing, the group has a tendency to get a lot of infighting. When the procedural is missing, nothing gets done until the last minute. We have a lot of rushing. And usually when there's no procedural, people just kind of divvy up the tasks and go their separate ways and then kind of knit this weird, one of the videos I think I may have linked in here, call it a Frankenstein's monster of roles. And so it's really important to have all of these roles in place, except obviously for the dysfunctional ones. The last one talks about why are people dysfunctional. And the book talks a little bit about something called social loafing. This is when someone just doesn't do what they're supposed to do. And what's crazy is when I'm in classes, when I'm talking to students, I say, okay, how many of you guys have been in a group where someone didn't do what they were supposed to do? And darn near everybody raises their hand, right? And how many of you have been in a group where you're the only person who did the work? And again, at least more than half will raise their hand. And it always gets me thinking, because in every group project, you always get, well, I had to do the whole project myself. Well, if everybody is doing the project, then who are these people who aren't? Well, here's the thing. A lot of times when people are not doing when they're supposed to be doing in a group, they don't realize it. Sometimes it's because there haven't been explicit norms, and we've talked about that in other videos. You have to have those explicit norms. Sometimes it's because there are differing expectations of what you think should be, and that's, you'll see that in a little bit later in the presentation. Like, I think we should be getting an A, you think a C is fine. And so that tension happens. But then also sometimes people are just like, you know what, no one cares, nobody cares about this project, so we're just going to do that. So oftentimes when people are dysfunctional, it's because there's a lack of those maintenance roles, or there's a lack of something procedural. Now, sometimes people are dysfunctional for being dysfunctional, and usually that's talking to not feeling listened to or not feeling heard. That can cause dysfunction. If the person isn't bought into the project and they don't have a vested interest, or if they feel there's something else going on in their lives, like something is happening externally. Just to make sure that you know how to access this link, click on here and you will actually see a more extensive list of all these roles. So when you go to do your final, y'all, this is important. Make sure that you're pulling from these lists to kind of talk about what roles are necessary. So here's your task roles, right? Here are your these roles are going to be more maintenance based. Here's some of your dysfunctional roles, and they also go further into this and talk a little bit more. The one thing that I did notice in this is that they do combine, when you go through this, they do combine, like gatekeeper and expediter. Those are procedural roles, and whereas a compromiser and a harmonizer, those are going to be a little bit more maintenance. So they kind of combine them here. Your book has some additional ones as well. And then here are some dysfunctional roles that you can use when you do your final exam case study. So, and there's a bunch of these out there, and you actually might be able to find even more in your book. So hopefully that gives you an overview of the Benne and Sheats roles theory, and that you'll be able to use when you exam. See ya.